Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Stream from 2024. So, I am a sucker for these kinds of films. Like, I don't care if it's written the exact same way as any of the other kinds of these movies, but I will watch them regardless. So we have just kind of like a home invasion kind of story, but it's much more taken place in a hotel environment. And I build it like this because there's like a hotel with several floors and stuff of that nature. So how the story is to roll out is we have a father named Roy who is in desperation to want to live the good old days with a family outing together where they're going to this theme park that ends up having like Universal or Universe or some goofy name in the name. And so Roy just wants like one more like family get together like thing and to just kind of get away for a weekend. Getting away for a weekend has his family go to this hotel that ends up being newly owned by a guy who is putting a game together. A game that these hotel occupant people will not enjoy because it eventually lead to four killers making their way through this hotel and try as much as possible to kill every person in this hotel, either one by one or even do a double kill at some point. And all of this killing that is to be going on is to end up also being put together on this like live streaming game of a thing. And people are betting, and people are desperately trying to figure out a way of like, okay, who is going to uh, all be killed? Like, I have a lot of money on this guy and that guy, so on, so forth. So, and traditionally, for every single one of these movies, there's always like the one hero character that has to just kind of take down all the bad guys and hopefully survive by the end of the film, like probably any traditional like final girl horror movie situation. But uh, so we would go on to have these four players, and these four players who are the killers. Uh, like at least they're not all wielding kitchen knives and they all are to look and seemingly being able to have done things that seem copy and paste like every horror movie you've ever seen in your life. A lot of the kills are actually really, I feel, unique compared to so many other things that I've ever seen. And also just like the stuff that they end up using. Like we of course have this big massive muscular Jack guy who's number 4, who he's like stereotypically just like picking things up and chucking them, and he's taking and grabbing people and slamming them into things like any normal massive dude would do. But then also he's like ripping pipes out of the wall, and like he's killing people in interesting ways. It's not all about the muscles. Like there's some weapons that he had. Like all of this is just really interesting. And then we also have this brother sister duo that is to kind of kill together, and they're playing a game within the game, tic tac toe, and they're just kind of doing some really interesting like stuff with the two of them. And then we have this last guy who is this hoodie character that like most of the time you just kind of see him like lurking in the shadows, or you just kind of see that eventually he is to like kill on his own, and he like has this like kind of Rambo looking just kind of knife, and that's how he goes after people. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, like I guess that's the stereotypical kitchen knife killer. But then we also have like the almost like Wolverine uh, style kind of killers also. So yeah, like there's there's interesting enough things going on in this movie that doesn't feel also like a Terrifier clone. Because the way that these people are acting, the tra la 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 triple D, and how they are to all have these masks, and like a lot of people probably just say that this is a Terrifier clone. It's not the exact same. It's not. Um, and then also, like, to me, like, I probably wouldn't immediately go to comparisons of Terrifier, which I'll go on and compare this movie to soon. Uh, but I will also tell you where you can go on and watch this movie. I thought that this movie was good enough. I thought it was a solid, good film because, again, I'm a sucker for these kinds of films, and I will watch them over and over again, even if they are the exact same kind of like story for story. Like, I'll watch all of them. I like these kinds of films because it's just like what's gonna be different about them. So, uh, I would go on to say like yeah, there's probably a number of comparisons. You can check this movie out on a mobile app called Zelifonic, Zelivonic, instead of going on into YouTube or some other weird, goofy app that would make you forcibly pay a certain amount of money to watch this. But hey, regardless, if you want to do that also, by all means, to check this movie out. But, anyways, um, Zelifonic for a mobile user, again, is a free way that you can say you can see this movie for free. So, with that to comparisons, the first thing that comes to mind is a movie I reviewed at some point called Christy with a K. And this movie, of course, is about a girl who is to be at her dorm during Thanksgiving break and comes to find that there is a number of people trying to hunt and kill her down. And those people are all wearing hoodies and they have aluminum foil over their faces. And like I thought that the movie was interesting enough. Go ahead and check it out because I would say the very first comparison to this. Then I'll go on and throw out movies like the Rob Zombie movie 31, which is very dark and gritty, but there also is to be a lot of similarities to this. Except the movie seems more like the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Running Man, which I probably shouldn't have said that last name because it seems that people are having problems with that name on YouTube. Regardless, it is what it is. So, other than that, there is to really have me want to compare this to a movie called Laid to Rest, which has a character called Chrome Skull that he on his shoulder has this like camera, and he's going after this one girl that leads to trying to get to all these other people, and it just becomes this fascinating story about like man, like this Chrome Skull character, like it's really hard for him to like be knocked down a peg, and like eventually we're trying to figure out and see like how it all plays out. And the killer is just this like really tall and gritty character. It's really cool. I really enjoyed that film. But then also, I think I'd have to go on and probably compare this to a lot of just like uh, the the death game kind of things. Like I would probably throw in like the Daniel Radcliffe Guns Akimbo, or also I'd throw in like the Kellen Lutz Samuel Jackson movie Arena, which that one is kind of very much Mortal Kombat, but like real lives are on the line. But still, like I always just like to throw in movies like Arena whenever I can, anyways. So with that said, I'm probably sure I will probably think of something that also is to be compared to this too. There also is a thing where the actor who plays Lockwood in this movie, the actual actor, is in another film called Would You Rather. It's kind of actually taking place like on a table, and people are forced to like play a game for money. But like one by one, eventually these people get lobbed up. So like Would You Rather was an actual film at one point, and I at some point watched it. So yeah, comparison there. Even though it's not the exact same thing, because it's not a slasher movie. It's kind of this uh, suspense, kind of like are they going to do it or not kind of thing. And horrible things end up happening to all those people. Check that movie out if you'd like. So, after going on and seeing all of that and spending so much time going on and doing so, now it is about that time to just break this movie down. And so, with that said, um, yeah, like this movie at the very beginning kind of reminded me of like the Chevy Chase like Vegas vacation thing where like Chevy Chase goes to his wife and he's like man like our daughter and son like I don't think I'm ever gonna see them ever again. And so the wife is just like, well, how about we have one more just one more outing? And then Chevy Chase is like, well, yeah, why don't we? And the funny thing of it is like, yeah, they're all supposed to spend this time together as a family, but they end up being so separated. And of course, with this one, it's not to be with comedy; it's to deal with horror. But yeah, like it feels quite similar ways of the Chevy Chase like Vegas vacation thing. So all done via these people locked in this hotel complex that they can't get out of, or when they try to escape. Let's see if they all do. Let's just say to just be very vague because there is one person who ends up actually getting a way to escape in the hotel. But then we also have like not only the four killers, we have Lockwood who is killing people also. And like at first we're trying to figure out who the other like killer guy is, but then we realize eventually in this movie that it is Lockwood. So also we had like so many veteran actors with also like the traditional like whoever they could get in this movie. And I thought that was really cool. I'm like, oh my god, this character is from like uh, the Scream parody movie where he plays Doofy, and he's in this film. And oh, hey, yeah, I remember. Like of course, the guy who plays Lockwood is like Reanimator guy and Cellar Dweller and all these other horror films that I've seen, and so on. It's like the guy who plays Dave in this movie, the guy who's like the detective guy, like I remember him from like the It original movie, and I was like, all right, yeah, we're having some horror alums in here, and of course, like the very first woman we see, who I believe is playing Linda in this film, I'm like, I've seen her in Cujo, and like, man, just like the who's who in this film. So, speaking of who's who, I think it's time to go through spoilers, and this time around, I do have a cast list and some kind of like little picture note things so I can figure out how this movie is to be thrown down. Because at some point, there's like just these little clippity clip of like just scenes where it's like all just kind of just chucked together in one area. And so I'm like, okay, how can I keep track of this all? So I kind of had to do that way. Oh, Jeffrey Combs, my bad. And Dee Wallace. Dee Wallace is the woman that we see first here. That's also from the Cujo movies or the Cujo film. So let's just get into it. It is spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time. I'm going to spoil Stream. So in the very beginning of this film, we of course have Linda, who is this hotel owner. She's going on and vacuuming, if I can say that word, vacuuming. And all of a sudden she notices that her cord is cut. She's like, what the heck? All of a sudden she bumps into this maintenance man. There's another kind of maintenance guy, but like this is the younger guy that we come to find out is kind of enrolled in what is to uh, be with Lockwood. He's working in cahoots with him. So uh, this maintenance guy goes on and is talking with Linda and is to mention how like there's rats in the building and he's gonna go on and Brad is Brad is this maintenance guy. And so Brad is talking to Linda and seeing how there's rats in the building. That's probably why the cord was cut, and that also there's like some rats in a certain specific room. And for Linda to not go up there, and Linda's like, "Oh, okay, well, like, should I bring an exterminator?" And Brad is like, "Oh no, I'll take care of it." and Linda is to be very appreciative of Brad and just doesn't think anything of it by going into that room. So as Brad leaves, and so Linda is continuing to just kind of go through the place, she all of a sudden is to be thrusted within this table, and the table breaks. The table has glass in it. Linda ends up getting kind of cut up, and then Linda is to be all of a sudden like taken to this one room where she's tied to this chair, and she is to be put a drill through her head, which of course we don't actually see, but we just see the blood that's plopping on the killer's shoes, which we then eventually realize at some point is Lockwood, who's killing people uh, within this film. Transition from the hotel that Linda was at um, to now Roy, who is at his home watching these old clips of his daughter doing cartwheels and the son's in the video and doing fun, quirky things just to get some kind of video attention, it seems. These home videos of old. So Roy is watching this via this camcorder, and all of a sudden the camcorder malfunctions, forcing Roy to then be in desperation to try and talk to his seemingly younger but tech genius whiz kid, Kevin. And Kevin is to not be all well and bothered because he is doing a live stream where he's playing a game with some girl online. And Kevin is boasting about how he has 1,200 views for this one stream that he had gone on and done. And Roy is like, well, yeah, but I need your help with something. Like, I need your tech skills, son. And so Kevin's like, oh, okay, all right. So he goes out there, realizes that the tech is far too old, that there's nothing he can do. And then Roy's just like, oh, well, at least you tried. So that then leads to find out what the heck the other, seemingly much older daughter of Roy's is up to. It seems that Taylor, who is to be an older daughter who is supposed to be 17, but I don't really buy that. Like, I want to know exactly how old this girl is because it does not look like 17. It looks like she's probably in her mid 20s, maybe older, don't know. I don't really think it matters, but still. And then also when you look at the footage of like the daughter and the son in like the camcorder thing, I'm like, well, like it doesn't seem that their ages are like way far apart. But then when you look at Taylor and then Kevin, I'm like, yeah, these ages are really far apart. So Taylor, the seemingly teen rebellious traditional character within this movie, is to have gone on and seemingly be bookendanoed by these police officers. And they are to bring Taylor home and to see, like, well, hey, like, this girl was trying to steal this beer, and we're going to let her off with a warning. And so Taylor is to just kind of storm in like any normal rebellious kid, and Roy has to go on and figure out a way to like be the stereotypical dad of like, oh, like why couldn't you have just gone on and just been like, why do you have to be just like this kid that's getting into so much trouble, blah blah blah. It's a lot of this going on. So Taylor storms off, goes into her room to listen to music, and so Roy is now storming off to go to his wife to just be so upset with only the one kid because Kevin, it seems, is just like a godsend. But still, like, Roy is just like, man, Taylor is just so rebellious. And so Elaine, who is the wife who finally appears in this movie, as if we like where was she? Why was she just in this like just dining room the whole time? Why didn't she come in and be also upset with her daughter? She just appears magically now. So Elaine, now in this room, typing away on her computer. So Elaine, Roy are talking. So Elaine makes the decision of like, well, hey, how about we get like a hotel for the weekend, and how about we just have like a family getaway for the weekend, and just plan something out just last minute and just have fun. And Roy is like, oh, well, all right, that sounds like what we need as a family to just kind of all like escape from all of what we're doing to just go on and just go on this trip. And also, like, I want to try to figure out why Taylor is to go on and be like so rebellious, like even to the point of her like wanting to like shoplift beer and whatever. I'm like, there is never like a root thing that she gets into at any point in this movie of like why she has to be rebellious. Like, give us some backstory of this character. No, she's just doing it because maybe she's just so bored within this town, or there's just not much to do besides just listen to music every day, to the point of her realizing that if there's to be two guys within the vicinity of her that like the same music, it's like, oh my god, I have to again just do something crazy and wild uh, because she's bored. So they make their way to this hotel, and I want to question within this movie, like, do these people ever sleep in this film? Like, you would think a lot, like, especially when this like game like pops off, like, it honestly doesn't make sense, because like the whole family all together is trying to sleep in this hotel, and seemingly like there are other people doing other things, but still, like no one is really just sleeping in this movie when they actually were going to. So it's just like, are they like, how late is this? Like, are these people just early risers? What's going on? So, or like early risers because they go to bed early? I don't know. So they all make their way to this hotel, this family, and Lockwood is behind the counter talking to this seemingly honeymoon couple. They're getting this honeymoon special room. And so Lockwood is going in detail about uh, the certain additions to the rooms that they're going in, as if he's fully aware about certain massage shower things, or he's just talking about how these honeymooners are probably gonna get to the good old thrusting. Because of course they are. That is the whole like skin scene that's kind of going on in this movie, and I probably should have said that earlier. So I'm sure there's probably somebody wondering if there's going to be some kind of skin in this movie, which there is. So Lockwood is to be like, oh, family over here. I shouldn't go into so much of this detail. And the honeymoon couple is just like, well, of course we just gotta get this room because we're probably gonna die in it later on. So the family comes in, and so they're talking to Lockwood, and like within this conversation, they realize the Wi-Fi isn't working, even though that's technically a lie. That some of the electric gadgets are not working. Like, they'll come to find that there's no cell phone service, because of course there isn't. And when Roy is to give his credit card, Lockwood is like, yeah, like because of the maintenance that's going on, yeah, like credit cards don't work either. Oh yeah, like uh just this gadgetry and whatever. And so Roy is like, well, luckily I brought cash. It's like, yeah, you don't want to see Roy like scrambling to go to the ATM or whatever, because that would take up more time in this movie. Like, you conveniently have Roy who has cash because script will need him to. So the family moves on, and so at one point, if we had Brad, the one maintenance man, bizarrely we have another uh, guy also, who is Hanson, who comes in, who is this kind of much older kind of maintenance guy, and he's looking at Lockwood as like, wait a minute, like where is Linda? And so like Lockwood realizing like, oh, this is another guy that works here. Like, Lockwood is just kind of scrambling to figure out some lie that he can go on and feed feed this guy so we can get him into this other room where he can kill him off. But really, he just kind of ties him into this chair after knocking him out, and then while Lockwood is kind of busy, kind of fiddling with his computer, he realizes that that Hansen has kind of awakened, and he'll deal with him. So, but let me get back to the story. So, while most of the family is going on and like paying for the hotel room, Taylor is all of a sudden seeing these two foreign men come in, and they have these accents, and she's so whisked away by seemingly a man with accents, because don't know what it is. You have a guy that, like, regardless of how tall or short he is, regardless of how good looking or not good looking he is, but man, if he has an accent, like, women just swoon. That's what happens. That's weirdly, goofily enough, just a thing that is to be, like, women just like a guy like that. Like, man, one occurrence, there was this guy who was very much way shorter than I was. Because, of course, a lot of people are shorter than me. But that's, unless I meet Shaq, and then I'm like, oh, Shaq! Yeah. No, there's a lot of people that are also taller. Mood point. So, this guy, shorter than me, but he has this name Leon, and he has this supposed accent, which I don't even know he actually had. Because I'm like, I never, like, he has an accent? Does he? I don't know. So, this guy comes in with his supposed accent, and women are just like, oh my god, I like this Leon guy. Do you think he's, like, with someone? And I'm like, well, I'm here, but right in front of you, you're talking to me about some other guy? Like, you're going to put in that work in, lady. But then again, I'm like, well, like, I don't know. Like, I don't think I've ever talked to him like that in depth about whether he has someone or not, but I think he does. I don't know. Talk to him about it. But then I was like, but that guy, really? You like that guy? And she's like, well, yeah, like, I just like his accent. And I'm like, does he have an accent? Never really noticed. I was like, man, if only I could just bust out some kind of, and like, I've worked with other guys with accents, and yeah, like these accent guys, they're dating multiple women. It's wild to just like find out that they're dating like 3 women at the same time or whatever. I'm just like, okay, whatever your lifestyle is, buddy. But it's like, but hey, like, I'm over here just doing my thing. I don't really give a shit. Like, so, but man, like those guys with accents, even the freaking movie of Don't Tell Her It's Me, Australian accent, woman swooned. So I'm like, damn, dang man, like if I could just get an accent going somehow, if I could fake some kind of accent for the rest of my life. So, so anyways, Taylor goes on and meets with these two guys with accents because I spent way too much time stretching into the whole real life story thing. And so Taylor meets with Theo and Louis. I think that's what his name was. So she goes on to find out that she has a relatable music choice between them, and that at some point they're going to this concert. Taylor's like, oh, I want to go. And so Taylor is going on consistently, getting eventually lost in the eyes of Theo because he's wearing this nice sweater and and looking all nice and attractive, long hair and this and that, and all good looking. So Taylor is like, I want me a piece of that. And that ends up, of course, getting interrupted by consistently her mom calling her. And then all of a sudden, the mom shows up within the bar, realizing, like, I'm sure, like, again, like, this girl has to go on and figure out some way of doing something that she's not supposed to. But so, Elaine and Taylor, like go across the bar and start talking. Elaine is like, you know what, like one, she notices that like, well, hey, I guess you have your fake ID, but Elaine is all just like, well, hey, like, yeah, if you want to go on and you want to like legally drink, like that's fine, do it, go ahead, just have some fun, like, and hey, like I saw those guys over there you were talking to, all right, like those guys are attractive, and like Taylor's like, ma, and Elaine's like, no, like it's okay, like it's all right, so like the mom is trying to be like this like cool mom, and it's like trying to tell like Taylor, it's like, yeah, like just yeah, go have fun and whatever, but like realize that like just again, like don't try to do anything to get you in jail again, because that's what we're trying to avoid here. So this mom is trying to be the cool mom. So anyways, uh fast track to now when like killing should be happening after this whole bar scene. So this one lady who is to have this kind of the Pines name tag on her, and she's getting out of this location, and she's going to her car. She puts her cup and her keys on top of the car, and all of a sudden it's to notice this guy off in the distance who's just kind of weirdly doing something by this tree, and she's very baffled and confused of what the heck is going on. So this guy, we come to find out, is adjusting this rope that ends being having a noose at the end of it. And while she ends up figuring out what this guy is doing, he then is like, oh hey, you, because most of these killers are, yeah, these killers don't go on and they don't say a single thing. Because again, they're all basically like Art the Clown. They're very quiet and they're just very like clown, goofy, kind of approaching of murderous ways. So this guy has this noose on the tree and then is to eventually see this woman point at her. And so this girl is going back to her car, realizing that this guy is going to go after her, and she can't get into her car. Her door is locked, the keys aren't there. Where was this stuff? And come to find out, there's somebody in the car who ends up opening this door by kicking it and has the girl fall over and I guess breaks her nose. And now this girl's like, oh, please don't kill me. Like the traditional people that every single time anybody's to ever die in a film, they had to like, please don't kill me. You know what? I, again, if I'm to ever see a horror film a billion times, I'm to always say, like, why not anybody just own the situation and just fight back? Like, yeah, we have these, like, hero people, but you know what? If you're gonna go down, effing go down swinging, I goddamn say, every one of these horror films. And also, any one of these situations where you have a person that's probably gonna die, but if it, just go out swinging. Just take a lucky shot and see if you make it, because that's better than just, oh, I'm just gonna wait till I just get hammered in the face and just get my nose chopped off in this, and then I'm gonna die from bleeding out too much. But whatever. So, oh, also, within that bar scene between both Elaine and Taylor, we have to have this bartender that comes in, who I know is like Doofy from like the Scream parody movie, and this guy's Mark. He's coming in and he's spending way too much time because this guy needs to have a lot of lines in this movie because he's gonna die fairly soon in it. So Mark is coming in and it's looking at Elaine. It's like, oh, what kind of beer do you have? And like Elaine is like, oh, I want this beer, and Mark is like, all right, like this girl knows what she wants, as he's like trying to offer these other things, and Elaine's like, no, I just want this. And like Mark is going on, and like he's kind of hitting on Elaine, and Elaine is like, oh, well, I still got it. Funny enough. But eventually we'll come to find that Mark, when he's doing some maintenance on an arcade game that which will happen fairly soon, because it's the next thing up here. He's going to die by player 4. So like I said, Mark is all alone. It's closing hours of this bar, so Mark decides to fiddle on uh, this Funland arcade game. And he fixes it, and then like there's a guy like that's off in the distance, just kind of staring him down, and Mark can feel it that there's somebody like just staring him down, giving him the cold shoulder, and that ends up being one. That ends up being player one. So Mark is trying to shoo him away, not seeing the mask or this guy's overall saying that he's basically here to kill somebody. And by the time that Mark just kind of finally just goes off and looks to see number one, he eventually vanishes, and it's like, oh, all right, well he's gone. To then all of a sudden be uh seemingly facing off against player number four, who's this big, massive, macho guy who has his overalls, and then the rest of his body, you can see all that biz. So that was a stupid thing. Like this guy is basically like shirtless. He just has these overalls, and he's player four. He has this goofy mask like all the other killers do. And again, this guy's bald. So yeah, so like this guy has a lot of skin. You could see. So yeah, so number four, who I just want to call freaking like, oh man, what a beefcake. Uh, I weirdly like muscular guys in films because at least it's very different than any of the other horror killers. But then again, that also makes me just like seem like a very strange guy. It's like, oh well, I know what kind of man you like. Yeah, big beefy dudes, slapping meat, whatever. Anyways, so I'm just trying to be funny and goofy and whatever it is. So big beefy guy goes on to take Mark, slams him against this arcade, throws him onto the ground, gets on top of him, takes his hammer, smashes him in the head, and then after that he decides even to go further and take these pruning shear like things that he can hold in like this one hand and like cut this guy's nose off. I'm like, dude, you already did the damage with the hammer already. Like, why did you have to go further into just cutting the dude's nose off? Like, this guy has already suffered enough. And then you pour the beer all over him. Just like, just put insult to injury, I guess. So then after that, uh, we have Roy and the family seemingly all like sleeping together, and Taylor goes off into finding the guys because they kept telling her what room that they were in, which was 207. And then so she decides like, oh well, I'm going to sneak out and find those guys so I can talk to them. And when she goes to them, she comes to find out that they are trying to get high, some kind. They're either taking cocaine or they're also trying to smoke marijuana. Taylor ends up telling the guys like, well, hey, you guys live in America. Like, you realize that there's probably smoke detectors. You probably shouldn't light that doobie here. And Louise is like, well, then we'll just take coke. And then Taylor is like, well, hey, how about we just go to the roof and we'll smoke that joint? And so Theo's like, okay, let's just go to the roof. And Louise is just there. So Taylor and Theo go up in the roof, and they're all touchy feely eventually on one another, but they're just kind of talking. So, transition. So, we have this honeymoon couple in this stereotypical tub that has this heart in it, and there's rose petals everywhere, and they are doing some thrusting within this jacuzzi or this tub or this whatever. And like we can see top half of girl and top half of guy, and that's it. Like the guy just sticks in the jacuzzi. We don't see anything below the belt seemingly for either one of these characters, but still we see quite enough. We see cheeks. We do. So as these two couple are deciding to thrust their way into their honeymoon. We have players 2 and 3 that make their way here that are the brother and the sister. 2 is the brother, and 3 is the sister. And 2 and 3 was the 2 who had also gone on and killed the girl who was in the parking lot, and it was that whole scene with the noose thing, because like they appeared and we realized that that person was going to die. So what happens is, as the thrusting is going on, we then come to find that 3 ends up appearing, and the couple stops what they're doing, and the guy just consistently tells 3 to just get out. Yeah, that's gonna do a whole lot of good, right? Get out of my place while I sit in this tub, thinking that you're gonna do exactly what I want you to do. Dude, this girl is wearing this like wild mask and is having this outfit that looks freaking awesome, but still like, dang. Uh, and you're thinking that she's gonna just like, oh, I'm sorry, my bad, and just leave. She's like, no, like I want to see what's going on. I want to see. I want to see what's going on in this scene. And then like number 2 comes from behind and smashes like a vase or something over um the honeymooner's face. And I think this couple is Mr. and Mrs. Welsh. That's in IMDb their names. So Mr. Welsh ends up getting Welshed with a like a vase or some glass thing to the face, and so he's bleeding, and he's in the like tub, and the Mrs. Welsh tries to get out of the tub while fully not putting any clothes on or a towel or nothing. And eventually this girl gets out of the apartment and just yells for help and bangs on all the doors while again she's wearing nothing. And I'm not I'm not sad about that. I'm not sad about that at all. I'm like, all right, okay. I hope that this girl gets help, even though I know she's gonna die. So, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So I want to say that like 2 takes the guy's head and like either like grabs it or maybe like snaps it, but like it doesn't look like he's like doing anything hard enough to make me realize that he like snapped the guy's neck. Like I'm assuming that that whole like him getting hit with that thing was enough to kill him, and uh like 2 is just taking this guy and just kind of like playing with him and then just thrusting him back into the tub for him to just kind of die as he's just in the tub in the water. So Mrs. Walsh gets out, and we have one of the killers that goes and grabs this like corkscrew because that's the only like seemingly weapon available, and it stabs her in the ankle with it. And but this girl, she ends up getting out of this room. She's banging on all these doors, and like she's thinking that she's gonna go on and get away, but it just seems in the nick of time before people end up coming back uh, to this room because they will uh, have me have to fill in some gaps here for what I didn't say. Uh, like yeah, like we have 2 that grabs uh, this girl in the nick of time, and then they kind of run away with her and then kill her. So, and then we find Roy going on and making his way back to the room. I think Kevin goes along with him. So, but they also meet somebody while that's going on. So let me get to that. So, Roy, Elaine, and Kevin are in the room together, and this is kind of backtracking a little bit. So, I apologize if this seems a little confusing. So, how we get to where Roy comes back to the hallway of almost getting to the point where he is almost to see that this naked girl is getting killed. So Roy and Elaine are sleeping together, and Elaine realizes that the people next to them are making far too much noise, and like it seems that they're talking too loud because it seems that they're like experimenting with one another because maybe they're having a threesome or something's going on. Not quite sure, but they're kissing one another, and every bit of what these three people talk about is just like, ooh, kinky, or ooh, how can we get this party started? They're those kind of people. So Elaine forces Roy to get to knock on the door next door. He does so, and he tries to quiet them down, and realizes that they're like, oh, they're just experimenting, exploring, and whatever. But they're just kissing. That's all they do. So Roy, after dealing with that, after going back to the room, Elaine is like, well, like Taylor's gone, and so obviously Roy is like, well, I guess I have to find where our daughter is. And so Kevin's like, well, hey, I'll go with you. And so it's like, all right, they go together. So as Roy is to go on and start to make his way through this hotel, not seeing much of anybody there. There's nobody at the front counter. Makes his way to like, well, maybe she went outside, and maybe she just went for a fresh air. Who knows? Roy tries to open the door and can't open the door. So eventually, the further that Roy and Kevin are now going through door to door to see if anybody spotted Taylor uh, or this or that, the two of them end up bumping into Dave, who he'll end up going on and kind of really helping out these two characters up into a certain point of this film. Probably because he'll die. But Dave bumps into both Roy and Kevin, and Roy is like, "Oh, who are you?" And Dave is like, "Hey, well, wait a minute. Let me get my wallet out slowly." Thrusts out the wallet. He's like, "Yeah, I'm LAPD. Like I'm a retired cop. Like, hey, like how can I help you out?" And Roy's like, "Oh, okay. Well, I feel like I could trust you now that you showed me your badge that I'm not quite sure is real or fake, but looks good enough for me, so I'll believe you." So but it's real. So because we find out like they try to give Dave some backstory where Dave had tried to like investigate this case somehow, and then he ended up like becoming part of it. But we'll get there within this story at some point. So Roy, Kevin, and now Dave are all together trying to find Taylor because uh because of Dave stating it's like, well, hey, yeah, like I lived right next door to these two guys with these accents, and like I overheard kind of what they were saying, and maybe your daughter like is with them in room 207. So while Roy and Dave and Kevin are all just kind of figuring out where this daughter situation is, all the while Elaine is alone in her room. So Elaine alone in a room gets a little on the door, and that ends up being one. And so like Elaine is okay, like Roy, did you forget your keys? And she looks at the door and realizes that it's one. It's player one. So Elaine is like, well, hey, like don't play around, this and that. I'll call the manager. I'll call this, and tries to scare this guy away, but he's not going away. He wants to kill this girl. So player one finds a way to get into Elaine's room, and and I believe this is while she is kind of reading this book on this chair. He then kind of creeps up behind her. I'm like, what are they trying to do? Like the Sigourney Weaver Ghostbuster thing, where like fists come through the chair, or like a knife comes through the chair and stabs her, or what? That would have been interesting, but that's not how they played out here. So one scares Elaine, then he tosses his knife that goes into her back. I'm like, oh. She falls over, and then player one wrenches with this barbed wire onto Elaine's neck, and she is freaking dunzo after that. She is dead. And I'm like, man, oh, like, I feel so bad, but then again, also, I'm like, this character had to die. Like, they had to start, like, you had to start thinning the herd at some point, sadly, and that's what they do here within this film. So, while that's going on, we have Lockwood, who is to record the death of Elaine and also to be watching this whole plaything unfold by these secret cameras that are to be placed all over the place. Because Brad and Lockwood are in cahoots, and Brad was to have talked to Lockwood about, like, well, hey, like I'm gonna get my money and get me out of here, and this and that. And so Lockwood ends up giving the guy the money after seemingly a lot of delay, and having Brad go on his happy way, as Lockwood calls him a hole. So, with sadly Elaine now being dead, we go on to have also, like I said, Theo and Taylor are on the roof, and they end up wanting to like figure out a way to still go to this concert because Taylor wants to go, but Theo is like, well, I only have one ticket and this and that, and I think Taylor is just wanting to figure out a way to just kind of run away from her family, and she might think that Theo could be the one to do that. And so Theo's like, well, hey, like, I think Louise is just a wanderer, anyways. So hey, how about we go and run off together? Like, we'll take this fire escape, and we'll just kind of leave and go on this concert together. And I'm sure Theo just wants to go on and do this so that way he can get into eventually Taylor's pants. Because it seems like he's touching her in the right places in the early parts of this movie. But so, anyways, the two of them run off, and Lockwood eventually doesn't notice this on camera that they're running off because he's busy with dealing with Hanson, the other maintenance guy. As we find that Roy is knocking on the door of 207, and it seems like he's not really getting much of any answer from that room. But so, anyways, back with Lockwood. So Lockwood is to realize this is the part where Hanson ends up awakening, and so Hanson is to mention to Lockwood, it's like, well, hey, I can help you, like come on, like I can work with you, like don't do this and this and that. So Lockwood is just like, you know what? You make a pretty good case there, Hanson, but no, like so. Lockwood ends up throwing this poncho on him, and he has this weird kind of corkscrew like knife because this guy likes to kill people with these drills, and then also he has this knife that looks like a drill. I'm like, okay, like I'm fine with this one guy having this like one kind of way of killing people. It looks interesting. So yeah, so Lockwood takes well care of Hanson by murdering him. So we have Roy, we have Kevin, and we have Dave all together now. And so Roy makes his way back to his room to to talk to Elaine, to come to find out that Elaine is dead. Roy notices that the door is open a little bit, and so he's concerned, and so he tells Kevin to just stay by the door. So Roy goes into the room and sees his wife dead, and I think I also got a little bit ahead of myself because I think this is exactly where Roy and Dave really have an actual like real conversation with one another, because they just kind of met together earlier, because Dave was mentioning about how this girl could be with these guys, and then they kind of separate, and then Dave meets back up with them to reveal that he's a cop. But it just seems like they're just always together here. So Roy tries to use his phone and no service, so he throws the phone and then grabs his son's laptop. And Roy and Kevin leave, and they meet back up with Dave, and Dave reveals he's a cop. They go into Dave's room, and they tell the boy, "Hey, go ahead and play your games while Dave and Roy just have this private conversation." So Roy is saying, like, you know what, I'm just keeping all this together for my son, and I'm like trying to find my daughter, but like in my brain, I just lost my wife. And so Dave is like, yeah, I get it, but we have to focus on what we can focus on. So, and also, like, Dave is trying to supposedly figure out this whole investigation of what's going on. All the while, Taylor and Theo are driving away, and the further and further they're driving away, Taylor is starting to have second thoughts. She's like, you know what, like, my dad was to show my family these tickets about going to this theme park, and like it seemed like most of my family was just so happy about it. It seemed that Roy was happy about it. I'm like, I don't know if I really want to go on and disappoint my family even more. And yeah, so Rory all of a sudden is getting cold feet about this whole running away thing, as Theo's like, well, hey, we can go to this concert together. Like, what better thing to do? Like, you and me together. And Taylor's like, yeah, about that. I don't know. Like, maybe you're going to get killed in this movie, and, like, maybe I'll just take your ticket. Because you're going to frickin' die. So, meanwhile, while that's going on, so another guy that I probably should have brought up sooner, but I forgot to, because Roy and Kevin are making their way through this hotel, and they notice that there's a guy with a ladder that is putting together these cameras and saying, like, well, hey, like, wait a minute, like, if this guy can put up this camera, why is it that the Wi-Fi doesn't work, or this doesn't work, or that? So they're trying to poke holes in this movie, but then like they come up with reasoning for what they're doing, and it's all just kind of like a wait, why isn't this I don't know. Like, at least they brought up the cameras in the hotel. Like, I thought that was like, oh good, they brought that up. But anyways, like, while Brad, the camera guy, is fixing up all these cameras, this drunk just comes in and just flies his way at this ladder, knocking Brad down. And then this drunk, who is to be talking about, like, hey man, why is there a ladder just in this hallway? Like, you would think that'd be just kind of dangerous and this and that. Like, uh just very like slurring his words and this and that, and me trying to figure out what this guy's name is by looking at the cast list. And me not seeing it at all. So, and we also come to find that this drunk guy has also a wife with him. So because we'll meet these characters again later. So because both Dave and both Roy are making their way through this hotel, and it seems like they're in the more of the outside part or outside skirts of this hotel, because there's all these lights outside, and it seems that this area is more open, and this seems to be the exterior of this hotel, seemingly, even though all the doors are locked. I don't know. It just seemed like they're trying to come up with finding some way out of this hotel, and they ended up in this area. So, as Dave and Roy are trying to figure out what's going on, this drunk guy comes back and is to mention how like things are going crazy and going wild, and him and his wife need to get the heck out of here. His wife appears, and then all of a sudden, like all the other uh, neighborly people that are nearby, all of a sudden start stumbling out here also to try to shut up this one drunken man. So as all these people start to gather, lights start to just turn off and on, and they're even looking uh, at Dave to be the one guy with the gun, like, hey, shoot, and Dave is like, shoot what? Because Lockwood is set up here as he gets on this microphone that Roy and Dave are to be the only possible ones who are to get into this game early because of the loss of Elaine and them knowing about it. And so everyone else now has to be clued in that this whole thing is to be set up as this big, huge, massive game where these 4 players are to be within it, and all these people are eventually going to die because these people signed away their terms of service, and it's okay for them to just get killed here. So, as well as also all these speakers being all around this location. So, as more and more of these people are to open their doors and to hear over the intercom of what's all going on, we then have to go back to the situation where Roy and Dave are with these people that kind of just stumbled out to just kind of hear what this drunken man is blabbering about. So these lights flicker off, then they flicker back on, and the drunken man and his wife are both killed. The drunken man is to be rammed into this light fixture, and the wife is to be just kind of killed within this railing, it looks like. So everybody's now scrambling what the heck is going on. We have 1 and 4 that, of course, would be both behind Dave and Roy, which leads to more deaths as Roy's arm gets cut, and 4 goes after this kind of elderly man that he smashes the head of. He crushes the head, takes the head, and just crushes it with his hands, like as if it's some kind of nut. Because sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. So, as well as also this guy rips, 4, he rips this pipe out of this wall, which is sweet. It was just like, man, what is he gonna do with this pipe? Not much of anything. Lace some pipe. Moving on. So people are dying. It's a horrific scene, and all the while, Kevin is finding out a way to try to get Wi-Fi. And when he ends up getting Wi-Fi, this kid is a tech whiz, and he ends up hacking into what is to be the game. He ends up seeing people getting murdered and killed. He ends up watching along as Louise is going through these vending machines, and 4 ends up creeping up behind him, smashing him into this vending machine, and then kind of throwing him to the ground. And so this guy's like, oh, don't kill me. And 4 takes this vending machine and just chucks it on top of him and crushes him. But we have to realize that, like, at some point, like, it looks like it's like falling on him, but then again, like, it seems like the Louise character was just kind of like placed like perfectly to where like it looks like it, but then like we transition into fake body that actually is there. Um, and then so Lockwood is all of a sudden having a conversation with Kevin, like, "Oh, hello, Kevin. Like, man, I really should have like factored things in for uh like a whiz kid like you, but I guess I just didn't think that far." And so Lockwood and Kevin are having this back and forth conversation, and Lockwood is to even ask Kevin to be like, well, like, you know what, if anything, like, you shouldn't be concerned about your dad or anything like that, like, if, or even your own well-being. If anything, you should be more concerned about where your mother is. Nobody ever asks about Elaine. Nobody ever says about the mother. Like, I guess maybe they're happy she's dead. I don't know. That just seems awful. But never Kevin wants us to be like, well, where's mom? Taylor never, where is mom? There is never a question in anyone's freaking mouth of where this woman is. They completely forget she exists. It's freaking weird. Again, like, if you give like a couple of scenes away from Elaine, like, you wouldn't know that this character would exist in this film. It's sad, but it's true. But horrifically, she dies. She does. So we then have the 3 stupid, kinky uh, characters that are to just want to go on and realize that they're possibly in a game, but they're just going to go out in the hallway just because they're stupid. Maybe they're high. Who knows? But either way, they go into this hallway, and 2 and 3 are there, and they're just thinking, oh, kinky. Like, maybe they want to play a game. And so the 2 of these characters are like skipping and tra la la fiddly dee to these 3 characters, and one of them has this like Jack in the Box like thing, and so they put that on the ground, and then I completely forget about it. And so what happens is we have 2 and 3, the brother and sister, and so 3 goes on and stabs the out of the 3 characters, the blonde in the chest, and immediately she just goes down. She's basically done for. Yeah, she's bleeding from out of the mouth, and the other girl that's with them like tries to drag the blonde, but like that girl is completely dead weight at this point, sadly enough. And so 2 ends up going for the guy immediately and has these X-23 or like Wolverine claws, and like he puts this guy up against this wall, and it's like, okay, how is this guy gonna get killed? And while that's going on, we have the one girl who ends up getting away, and she has like the black hair. And more likely, I should probably actually figure out what her name is, which I probably won't be able to find. I'm sure. Uh, yeah. Oh, Sarah? I believe it's Sarah. Good. So Sarah gets away. She goes down these stairs to eventually like have to kind of stumble away from like one, or just try to figure out a way to just kind of get out of this locale. But so 2 and 3 are with the guy out of the 3 of these people, and they decide to just continue to just cut through this guy to play tic-tac-toe. And so they're cutting O's and X's, and we're obviously seeing them cutting to a close thing and then cutting away, so that way like they can figure out a way to just cleverly edit the whole like this guy getting cut into kind of thing. And it's great. Like it's great how they did that. And so at some point, two out of the two of them, he wins the game and he puts the cross over everything, and so he ends up going on and killing the guy. So Sarah is now like rummaging through these stairwells and bumps into Kevin, and so both her and Kevin, Sarah and Kevin, are kind of running away from one. So Kevin and Sarah are in the hallway. They're running away together, and she's hitting this elevator button, and that then leaves this door to open, this elevator, and Sarah ends up getting grabbed by the girl 3. So we have Lockwood that is going on and now looking about how 2 and 3 have really killed a lot of people at this point. He's like, man, like these people have been racking up style points all night long. Like, if anything, like I'm sure they're probably going to win the pot here if they live to see it through. So Roy and Dave are to just kind of hide away from 4 as he makes his way around to kill, I'm assuming, Louise. And Dave fired off his gun and then dropped it on the ground, forcing then Roy to regather the gun. And he's like, well, hey, I'm going to keep this gun on me and probably kill these guys. So back with Sarah. Sarah is now fighting against 3, and Sarah all of a sudden has this tray. She's hitting this tray against 3, and 3 ends up getting kind of punched in the stomach to where she drops this knife. And so now they're fighting seemingly almost on top of this tray, as the two of them are kind of like one on top of the other. And so Sarah grabs this fork, stabs 3 in the neck. Now the hot number 3 is dead. She's stabbed in the knife and killed. 2 notices that, like, okay, his sister's dead, and like doesn't have any emotional connection. Like, no, he just moves on. It's like, oh well, okay, like Sarah's still there. I'm going after her. I'm ticked off, but hey, like, it is what it is. So Sarah sees this open window that she can slide out of her way of and hope to escape, and 2 is desperately grabbing her legs, hoping that he can get her from not doing that. And Sarah ends up slipping out of this window and closing the window, and she has a sigh of relief because she feels that she has escaped, only to be met by Lockwood, who is wearing this weird, I would say like Dr. Purge like mask, and or like it's like a weird like old fashioned like steampunk kind of like doctor mask that has like the weird beak on it. And he comes in, takes the shovel, kills this girl, and she's done for. It's like, oh, she got away. Yeah, not so much. So while Kevin is now gone, we then have both Dave and Roy that make their way back to the room to then realize that, one, Kevin is not there, but then also to realize that they are going to be met by some company, some big beefy company. Because 4 is going to meet them at their room and try to murder them. So they try to leave this room, and then they're met by 4, and they're like, oh, so these guys are getting thrown around by 4. It's horrifying. And so Roy gets further and further into the room, and he's getting flung around by 4. And I'm like, man, like, do they have a stunt double? Like, it seems like they're really going through and hitting these guys with legitimately. So Roy's taking the damage, he's taking the licks, and so we would have a point where now 4 is holding this big, huge, massive thing over his head, and Dave comes in and fires away at 4, murdering 4, and then Roy just looks at Dave and is like, man, like, that guy had a heavy object on him. Like, you think you could have gone on and could have fired sooner? You think you could have gone on and, like, hoped that that guy wasn't going to throw that thing at me? And Dave was like, well, like, if anything, we're at a point in time now where, like, just kind of place your bets. Like, I thought you wouldn't mind if you would have still been alive, technically. So we have one that finds Kevin and holds a knife to his face, but then all of a sudden there is to be this attempted security breach, which brings back all supposedly 4 of the characters or the murderers back to their kind of home room, war room base or whatever, whatever really weird, goofy room that has that computer in it, and their kind of headquarters. So while that's going on, both Taylor and Theo find a way to get back into the hotel. Don't know how. I guess it's just they can get into the hotel, but heaven forbid they not be able to get out. It's very strange. So while Theo and Taylor are talking, all of a sudden there's 2 that comes in with a big massive spear. You would have thought that would have been something that would have really stuck out between these 2 people, but I guess you'd realize wrong. So 2 comes in with a spear, stabbing Theo, and what we are to assume also is to be Taylor. And Lockwood is looking at the camera, is like, oh man, a double kill, all right. But so that is to actually not be the case. Taylor, it seems, is stabbed, but not stabbed in a way that it goes completely through her. So she's still alive, and eventually she separates the spear from herself and then continues on to eventually figure out where the F her family is. So Roy and Dave are running around trying to find Kevin, and Roy is consistently yelling for Kevin, and Dave is like, dude, like, killers are going to come here if you're shouting, because we have to do this in every horror thing. To just be like, God, you were stupid, like, person who's screaming for a person that is to be really not sure if you're going to find this person here or not. But anyways, so come to find out, Roy will find somebody, and it won't be Kevin. It'll be number 1. So number 1 and Roy are fighting with this knife against one another, and Roy is looking at Dave now because he has the gun. So Roy is like, hey man, shoot him, and Dave is like, ha ha ha, no. And so he runs away, and because he's betting on his life, but then also he's working on the bets of this whole entire game. And so this guy is to have been a guy that investigated this case, but then ended up getting in on it because he's a dirty cop. And so he made bets on this game, and so he was physically a part of this game. So he's cheating in the game. We'll come to find out. So because he wanted to win big, because he wanted Roy to die, and he wanted to win a lot of money. Come to find out. So Roy is dealing with one as Dave is going into the computer room, and he's trying to get his money transferred to him because he thinks that he won, because Roy, it seems, is dead. So because Dave is celebrating. He's like, oh my God, yeah, all right. So Lockwood meets up with Dave and is now like upset with this guy because he's cheating. And so here is where we again have Lockwood with this drill knife and this drill stabbing into Dave and drills through his face into his eye and kills him because Lockwood was underneath this sheet this whole time and Dave didn't have no never mind about it. So after that, we see that Roy and one had a tussle, and the fighting ends up coming out of frame, and then when a person comes out of frame or comes back into frame, we see that someone is wearing the disguise of number one, and we're thinking like, oh, Roy is dead now. We'd have to assume. But I'm like, I don't think so. I was immediately just like, no, Roy in disguise. So what ends up happening is they play up the fact Lockwood is to tell that there's two killers left and there's only so many number of people. So like hey, there's only two players on the board. Like let's kind of wrap it up here. So 1 and 2 meet together in a hallway, and 2 is tra la la fiddly dee, and 1 is just like, okay, what the heck? So they walk, they meet, and then 2 just is to like part ways for 1 to just continue to walk through the hallway, as again 2 is just tra la la and fiddly deeing through it. So one who is Roy, and I'll just call him Roy for the rest of this thing. Roy goes on to find Kevin in this kitchen, and he then is to remove his mask, showing that he is Roy to his son, and so Roy tells Kevin, "Hey, fake that you're dead, so I can so I can get you out of here." Because 2 finds 1 with this body, and he's like, "Ah, shucks." So Roy is carrying his son's body, and Lockwood figures out that Roy is still alive, as well as also like that he's a decoy. So Lockwood relays this to number 2, and then that forces Roy to then like swing his son's legs to kind of knock over 2. Then they end up trying to like kill him in this oven and light him on fire and kill him that way for horrific burns. And I think also Roy gets in the mix, or Kevin gets in the mix where he like stabs 2 a little bit. So now that 2 is dead, all the killers are now dead, and now like Lockwood is ticked. He's like, oh man, like we're gonna have to go into overtime in on this one. And now Lockwood is gonna have to be the final boss killer character, because like now he's like, well, I have to do something. So Lockwood gets his big beefy axe out, and he's like, all right. So Lockwood is upset because it costs a lot of money to eventually have all these killers be killed, and it costs him a lot of money that he lost, and so on. So yeah, so Lockwood is upset. So we have Roy, we have Kevin that makes it to the front of these doors, and these doors made out of glass. And so Kevin is like, well, hey, like there's this luggage cart here, like toss the luggage cart in front of the door to see if it breaks. And Roy is looking at Kevin's like, oh, good idea. So tries to bash the door. Nothing is working. So this forces Lockwood all the time in the world to make it back to Roy, to Kevin, to have this face off here. So the face off between Lockwood and Roy here, like, it seems that Roy eventually gets the upper hand on Lockwood, but then Lockwood eventually comes back. But before that actually happens where Lockwood comes back, Roy is talking to Kevin. It's like, okay, like everything's done, like we're safe now. And then all of a sudden Roy ends up getting stabbed in the back from Taylor, thinking that it's just some killer, not knowing any better, thinking that she saved Kevin, but then realizes, like, oh no, I just killed my father by accident. So Taylor is now having this heart talk with her father, and Roy is just like, oh, just be good to one another and take care of each other. Taylor's like, no, no, and like Roy's like, I love you, and Taylor's like, no, just stay alive, even though I murder you horribly by accident. And so, freaking Roy is gone. Like, they end up kind of wheeling him out Gurney style, but like, we're like, well, he's obviously dead, right? Like, I think they wheel him away. Like, you see it in the background that he's like being like taken out by this ambulance, but that could have honestly actually been anybody also. But still, like, I thought it was Roy. Anyways, so Taylor and Kevin are the only two left. Lockwood gets back up, and so now Lockwood is thrusting Taylor chokingly against this wall. Taylor finds this axe. She grabs it from the wall, chops Lockwood's head off. Now Lockwood is dead. So really, that the thing that happens after this is, like, now the ambulances come, some time has passed, and now Taylor and Kevin are in this ambulance together, and it's like, man, you guys are lucky to be alive. Yeah. And so we have this detective that's coming in, and he's apologizing, like, I'm sorry for your family. They had to go through this unspeakable night, and cliche-ish garbage. So we have this ambulance guy that's giving the two kids coffee, and he's on the streaming app. He's like, yeah, like, I won this bid, and he's all like happy and like, man, I guess everybody's tied to the streaming thing. And then the way they wrap this movie up is we just have like Tony Todd that comes in, and he's talking about how there's going to be a sequel set up and how he's going to be possibly going to be the next Lockwood like character. But sadly enough, Tony Todd dies. So if they were even going to have a sequel to this film, sadly enough, they were not going to be able to have it with Tony Todd because he dies, or he died in real life. Tony Todd did. But Tony Todd is talking about this game and how, like, there's a future in it, and like setting it up for a sequel. Bizarrely, he's in this car and they light it on fire. But he's setting up that he's going to be the new Lockwood, and he has the Lockwood mask, and like that's how they wrap up the film. So that's how I'm going to wrap up this review. Yeah. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about Stream, because maybe you saw it at some point. And then also, like, I went through this whole movie, and like, yeah, there were some things that I went into, but also I just kind of just, as per usual, described the movie. So with that said, I'm gonna get the heck out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.